Story 1. Long story short, my 20 females parents divorced when I was 9. After the divorce, I had to stay with my grandparents for 5 years. My dad remarried in 2013, and in 2014, my stepmother had my half-brother. Then they asked me to move in with them, and I accepted. When I moved in, it was the worst time of my life. I was 14, yet they quickly became extremely demanding and aggressive verbally. I was allowed to go out with my friends only once or twice a month. I had to clean, to cook, to take care of my half-brother. Meanwhile, all my stepmother had to do was to look after my half-brother. They didn't let me get a job. I became very frustrated because I just observed how my teenage years went down the drain. My stepmother was one of the reasons everything went downhill, as she was equally abusive as my father was. I still somehow despise her because it seemed like he only cared about her and his new family, buying her cars, new clothes, while all I got was a pair of jeans per year. When I was 19, I ran away. I couldn't deal with their behavior and lack of respect. I went no contact and moved with my grandparents. I told them about everything, because I wasn't allowed to speak about that with anyone while I stayed with my parents. And they understood me. My parents were complete douchebags. Then my stepmother found out she was pregnant again. This year, in March, they called me to come over there and talk about things. I did, and they apologized. I was shocked, but I accepted it. Time passed. They started to treat me like an adult. They accepted my boundaries, one of them being that I do not want to move back as I have my own life here. In June, my father told me that my stepmother found a job, her first job since they got married, and will start in September. He asked me if I can work as a babysitter for my half-sister, and I politely declined, because I really can't look after another toddler. I have some mental health problems of my own that I have to solve, and to be honest, those 5 years I helped with my stepbrother were enough for me. After some weeks, I noticed that they wouldn't call me anymore, and they got colder. My father started to get irritated with me again, telling me that he's very stressed, pointing out somehow that he's stressed also because I declined his offer. Now, he makes $2,000 a month. If he wants to, he can hire a babysitter if he wants. They both started to tell me that I'm not helping out the family when in need, and basically, the same old things, which made me feel like everything was just a facade to make me move in again with them. That I'm careless and that this is not what a real family looks like. Now, am I the a-hole for declining to be a babysitter for my 1-year-old half-sister? Edit. I live in Eastern Europe, where $2,000 are a lot. I actually moved in with my grandparents in 2019, and I have been staying with them since. I have no desire to move back. I just hope that it won't come back to me. For example, them telling my family that I don't want to help or something. When I left in 2019, they told the rest of the family many bad things about me, trying to change their opinion about me and to make them side with them. So that is what I'm a little bit afraid of. I know that after I left, everything went downhill. Dad can't help stepmom as he's working all day. Stepmom is dealing with the kids. When I went to visit, after they apologized, the house was a mess. And I heard from the family that it had been like that since I left. No food is prepared, sink full of plates on counters type of mess. That is one of the reasons I never even considered the offer, even a bit. Now for some comments. Absolutely not the a-hole. It was just a facade. I know this type of people well. They are only interested as long as they think they can take something from you. Even if there was no previous history of abuse on their side, you are entitled to say no when you need to take care of yourself. In fact, you are even entitled to say no just because you don't want to. Keep your boundaries and take care of yourself. Not the a-hole. They apologized not because they were sorry or felt bad for what they had done, but because they wanted you to do something. They want you as a free live-in babysitter, so stepmom can work or go to parties. I would bet she doesn't have a job, or at least not like anything above part-time. Don't entertain them. If they whine, just let them know that you are an adult and they can handle their own lives. You need to handle yours. Not the a-hole. At your age, you should be concentrating on building your own life and career. and family childcare isn't going to do anything for your resume or your bank account. Plus, being dependent on people who asked you back last time for exactly the same reason and treated you badly would be a very stupid idea. Story 2. My, male 31's, wife, 29, has a half-sister that I don't get along with for several reasons. For example, her sister ruined my wife's wedding dress 2 weeks before the wedding after she went to try it on without consent. She stole her car and hid it for days, hoping that she could keep it. She also lied to the family about me being inappropriate towards her. Her mom always backs her up and expects my wife and now me to take it. When we announced my wife's pregnancy, her sister lied and announced that she was pregnant, but it was awkward since everyone knew about her inability to have kids with her husband. She moved to our town, and she started calling my wife to come help her move stuff into her new place. The problem is that my wife is 7 months pregnant. She suffers from medical issues and needs to be careful. I told my wife to be careful. She said she had to help, and her sister calls to say she needs help with small boxes. But my wife ends up carrying heavy boxes and furniture. I afford her sister that she hire movers, but she said no need, just a few things. But she's been saying this for days. I offered to help out myself instead of my wife, but she argued with me, telling to stop trying to control my wife. Yesterday, sister-in-law called her to invite my wife for tea. I went with her, although my sister didn't want me. Once we sat down, she asked my wife if she could help her move boxes upstairs. The boxes were big, the staircase was long. I told my wife to not help. I didn't let her. It's not safe and something might go wrong. Her sister blew up at me, telling to stop controlling my wife and tell her what to do. I argued with her about how inconsiderate she was being of my wife and the baby. She just laughed it off, calling me overdramatic and that the baby will be fine. She insisted my wife help her, but I wanted us to leave. Her sister started calling me names while being nice to my wife. I took my wife home, and her stepmom called to berate me for what I said and did earlier. She told me to stay out of my wife's and her sister's relationship and called me an abusive jerk for trying to stop my wife from helping out her sister. Her dad agreed and told my wife she needed to stop letting me dictate her interactions with family. My wife defended me, but still didn't see anything wrong in her sister's behavior. In fact, she felt guilty for not helping. I refused to apologize after they pressured me. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole, but why is your wife such a doormat to these people? Lifting heavy boxes at 7 months is absolutely risking the baby. She might not care about her own health, but surely she wouldn't want to risk injuring the baby. Your wife is showing the behavior of the person who has been abused and guilted by their abuser into thinking that they deserve it. She needs therapy. Your sister-in-law and mother-in-law are narcissists. So yes, please always be this hot-headed in terms of protecting your wife, because they will never see their mistakes. Also, tell your sister-in-law and mother-in-law, if anything happened to your wife or your child because of them, I will hunt them down and will do something I will never regret. I don't know how I will do it, but I will figure this out. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Is she trying to cause her to hurt herself or actually miscarry? Not everyone needs to stop exerting themselves when pregnant, but mostly, it's rude at best to try to get a pregnant woman to do manual labor. Offering to do it yourself should have been a really easy fix. Story 3. My brother recently married a woman who has a young daughter, 7 years old I think. They only dated for a short while and were engaged for less than a year. But that's a different story. If it comes off like I don't like my sister-in-law, that's kinda true. She's a bit snobby and entitled, and I haven't had a lot of positive interactions with her. This is kinda relevant. I have an uncommon name, but it's not totally unique, just kinda old-fashioned and a pretty long name too. For the sake of this post, let's say I'm Marianne. I've gone by my full name my whole life, and I've always rejected nicknames. I happen to like how it sounds. Let's say my sister-in-law's daughter is Mariana. My sister-in-law took to calling me nicknames. For this analogy, she calls me Mary. I absolutely hate the shortened version of my name. I've asked her multiple times not to call me it, and she always forgets. I've taken to ignoring her if she calls the wrong name. But apparently that's rude. She says it's confusing since I have such a similar name to her daughter, and it's easier to remember, say, the nickname instead of my own. I've told her if she liked it so much, she can give her kid the nickname, but I won't tolerate it anymore from her. According to her and my brother, I'm being aggressive and childish, and it's not that big of a deal. I asked how she'd feel if I called her the wrong thing or called her daughter a name she doesn't like. She obviously hasn't responded to those questions. She's been saying I'm only being difficult because I dislike her, and she doesn't see why it's such a big deal. I know I may have come off as a kind of jerk, but to be honest, you shouldn't call someone something they don't like. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole, especially because you've asked numerous times not to call you that. You should start calling her the wrong name, or call her your brother's ex's name by accident one day. Sorry, I'm petty, not good advice, haha, but I just really hate entitled people. Not the a-hole. Tell her you would be willing to change your name to Princess Consuela Banana Hammock. Her choice. She either calls you Marianne or Princess Consuela Banana Hammock. But you won't be responding to anything else, including Mary. Not the a-hole. Start calling her daughter the nickname she assigns you. Story 4. I, 29 male, work in a pretty tight workspace. We have about 9 of us in my department, and it's a pretty even split between men and women. There's one co-worker, Eva, 20 female, who started working here a few months back. She's really good at her job and seems to get along with everyone. We get along well as we work on projects together and are usually in the group of people that are the last to leave most days. I learned some weeks ago that she was calling herself my work wife. I knew what the term meant. The sentiment wasn't shared, and I've expressed as much. I don't think I've been rude about it. I just let her know that I'd prefer for her to keep things a bit more professional. There's no real harm in the term, but for someone who doesn't understand the joke, it just looks and sounds wrong. I'm also a happily married man, and my co-workers, including Eva, know this. I thought I had done a pretty good job nipping things in the bud after our conversation, because I no longer heard the jokes from her. So I didn't think it would be an issue to invite her to my wife's baby shower. My co-workers are all vaccinated and my wife works from home, so there wasn't much concern for the sickness that shall not be named. Eva comes in and immediately starts back up with the jokes. Your OP's home wife? Nice to meet you. It's so nice to see who takes care of my hubby when I send him home. My wife is a very sweet and patient woman, so she just laughed it off, albeit uncomfortably, and moved on. However, the jokes got worse and wouldn't let up. At one point, Eva was telling people she would be our baby's second mom. My wife's friends and family were annoyed, and my wife looked very uncomfortable. I had pretty much had it by then, and took her aside and told her that the jokes weren't funny and that she could either apologize to my wife right now for being so inconsiderate and gross, or she could just leave. She chose to leave. Word got around to our co-workers what happened, and while they agree that she was acting inappropriately, that I should have let her down a little easier, as it was obvious she likes you, OP. Am I really the a-hole for kicking her out? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. You already asked her to stop once. Forcing the work wife thing outside of work is creepy and super unprofessional. She chose to leave rather than stop like you asked. How dare she say such things in front of your wife at her baby shower? Gross. Not the a-hole. Not only is she acting unprofessionally after you've discussed the issue with her, it's kinda creepy she continues the fantasy in your own home. She knows you are married with a kid on the way. There is no excuse for her behavior. Obvious she likes you or not. It's beyond inappropriate and time for her to move on. The fact that it's obvious she likes you argues for more strenuous reactions, not let her down easier. She's hitting on a married man in front of his wife at his wife's baby shower. And you've already clearly drawn a boundary, which she's violating. She's completely out of line, and your behavior was exactly right. I have no idea what your co-workers are thinking. Enable the stalker, disrespect your wife, ignore them, and go to HR.